This chapter develops a number of crucial cost concepts that will be employed in the succeeding chapters to analyze the four basic market models. A firm's implicit and explicit costs are explained for both short and long-run periods. The explanation of short-run costs includes arithmetic and graphic analysis of both the total, average, and marginal cost concepts. These concepts prepare students for both the total revenue minus total cost and marginal revenue equals marginal cost approaches to profit maximization, which are presented in the next few chapters. The law of diminishing returns is explained as an essential concept for understanding average and marginal cost curves. The general shape of each cost curve and the relationship they bear to one another are analyzed with special care. The final part of the chapter develops the long-run average cost curve and analyzes the characteristics and factors involved in economies and diseconomies of scale. In the last word, there is a discussion about 3D printers, a new technology that may revolutionize manufacturing. Learning objectives. Explain why economic costs include both explicit and implicit costs. Relates the law of diminishing returns to a firm's short-run production costs. Distinguish between fixed and variable costs and among total, average, and marginal costs. Use economies of scale to link a firm's size and its average costs in the long run. Give business examples of short-run costs, economies of scale, and minimum efficient scale, MES. Economic costs are the payments a firm must make or incomes it must provide to resource suppliers to attract those resources away from their best alternative production opportunities. Payments may be explicit or implicit. Recall the opportunity cost concept. Explicit costs are payments to non-owners for resources they supply. In the textbook's t-shirt example, this would include the cost of the t-shirts, clerk's salary, and utilities for a total of $63,000. Implicit costs are the monetary payments the self-employed resources could have earned in their best alternative employments. In the textbook's t-shirt example, this would include foregone interest, foregone rent, foregone wages, and foregone entrepreneurial income for a total of $33,000. Economic or pure profits are total revenue less all costs, explicit and implicit, including a normal profit. Economic profit will always be smaller than accounting profit, which excludes implicit costs. The normal profit is the return to the entrepreneur and is the amount of money required by the entrepreneur to stay in that market. Economic profit versus accounting profit. Economic profit is equal to total revenue less economic costs. Economic costs are the sum of explicit and implicit costs and include a normal profit to the entrepreneur. Accounting profit is equal to total revenue less accounting or explicit costs. The short run is a period of time that is too brief for a firm to alter its plant capacity, but during which the firm can change output somewhat by increasing or decreasing its variable inputs. The long run is a period of time that is long enough for the firm to adjust the plant size, as well as enter or leave the industry. All inputs are variable in the long run. One of the primary characteristics of the long run is that it is enough time for firms to enter and exit the industry. Notice that the actual time associated with the short and long run will differ among industries. Light industry and retailing, small t-shirt manufacturer, can adjust quickly compared to heavy industry and oil company, which may take years to change capacity. The production relationships reflect how labor and output are related in the short run. The total product is the total quantity that is produced. Marginal product is the amount that total product changes when labor changes by 1 unit. It reflects the change in output when one more unit of labor is hired. Average product is the output that is produced per unit of labor. As successive increments of a variable resource are added to a fixed resource, the marginal product of the variable resource will decrease. Essentially, the fixed plant gets overcrowded with variable resources. If we focus on labor being the variable resource, when there isn't any labor, then the plant is underused because none of the machinery is being used, etc. When hired 1 unit of labor, the machinery is still underused. There is machinery that is often idle as that 1 unit of labor has to perform all of the tasks. As the firm continues to hire more and more labor, the TP is rising by increasing amounts because the machinery is being used more and more to its capacity. However, at some point there will be so much labor that the fixed resources are overutilized and the individuals will have to wait to use the necessary equipment. This is where we might see diminishing marginal returns, where the TP is still increasing when hiring one more unit of labor, but it doesn't increase as much as it did with the previous units of labor. The table on the next slide presents a numerical example of the law of diminishing returns. You can see that at first TP is rising at an increasing rate, so MP is positive and getting larger. This is called increasing marginal returns. Then TP continues to increase, but by smaller and smaller amounts. Fixed, variable, and total costs are the short-run classifications of costs. In the short run, costs can be variable or fixed. Fixed cost examples: rental payments, insurance premiums, interest payments. This table shows total costs on the left and per unit cost on the right for an individual firm in the short run. We know this is the short run because there are fixed costs. Total fixed cost, TFC, is independent of the level of output. Total cost is the sum of fixed cost and variable cost. Total variable cost, TVC, changes with output. Since the only thing that differentiates these per unit costs are useful in making comparisons to product price. Average fixed costs reflect the fixed cost per unit produced, whereas the average variable cost reflect the variable cost per unit produced. The average total cost can also be found by adding the AFC and AVC. Marginal costs play an extremely important role in the firm's decision making about how much they will produce. Marginal costs reflect the additional cost associated with producing one more unit of output. MC tells the firm how much it will cost to increase output by one more unit. Marginal cost essentially measures the rate of change in the total costs. AFC falls as a given amount of fixed cost is apportioned over a larger and larger output. AVC initially falls because of increasing marginal returns, but then rises because of diminishing marginal returns. Average total cost, ATC, is the vertical sum of average variable cost and average fixed cost, AFC. The only difference between the ATC and AVC is the AFC. Remember, ATC is equal to AFC plus AVC, or AFC is equal to ATC minus AVC. So the vertical distance between the ATC and AVC is the AFC. You want to get used to measuring AFC in this way because at some point the AFC will no longer be included in the graphs. Shifts in the curves will occur if either resource prices or technology change. For example, if fixed costs increase, both AFC and ATC shift up. If labor cost or some other variable input cost rise, then the AVC, ATC, and MC will shift up. This graph shows the relationship of the marginal cost curve to the average total cost and average variable cost curves. The marginal cost curve cuts through the average total cost ATC curve and the average variable cost AVC curve at their minimum points. When MC is below average total cost, ATC falls. When MC is above average total cost, ATC rises. Similarly, when MC is below average variable cost, AVC falls. When MC is above average variable cost, AVC rises. Marginal decisions are very important in determining profit levels. In order to make marginal decisions, marginal revenue and marginal cost are compared. Marginal cost is a reflection of marginal product and diminishing returns. When diminishing returns begin, the marginal cost will begin to rise. The marginal cost curve and average variable cost curves are mirror images of the marginal product and average variable product curves. Assuming that labor is the only variable input and that its price, the wage rate, is constant, then when NP is rising, MC is falling, and when NP is falling, MC is rising. Under the same assumptions, when AP is rising, AVC is falling, and when AP is falling, AVC is rising. In this graph, you can see the relative manufacturing cost for selected nations as a percentage share of world exports. Note that total costs per unit of output can vary substantially from country to country. An industry and the individual firms that are in it can make all desired resource adjustments in the long run. All resources are variable, therefore all costs are variable in this time period. Any number of short-run optimum size cost curves can be constructed. The long-run average total cost curve is made up of segments of the short-run cost curves, ATC1, ATC2, etc., of the various plant sizes from which the firm might choose. The long-run cost curve is also called the planning curve. Each point on the bumpy planning curve shows the lowest unit cost attainable for any output when the firm has had time to make all desired changes in its plant size. The long-run average total cost curve just envelopes the short-run average total cost curves. If the number of possible plant sizes is very large, the long-run average total cost curve approximates a smooth curve. Economies of scale followed by diseconomies of scale cause the curve to be U-shaped. Economies of scale refers to the idea that for a time, larger plant sizes will lead to lower unit costs. An increase in inputs where there are economies of scale will lead to a more than proportionate increase in outputs. Labor specialization leads to economies of scale because it makes use of special skills. Proficiency is gained as the worker concentrates on one task and time is saved. Managerial specialization leads to economies of scale because managers can manage more workers with no increased costs. And managers can specialize in their respective area of expertise. Efficient capital leads to economies of scale because high volume production warrants the expensive large scale equipment. Other factors lead to economies of scale because costs such as design, development, and advertising are spread out over larger quantities. Constant returns to scale will occur when ATC is constant over a variety of plant sizes. When there are constant returns to scale, an increase in inputs will result in a proportionate increase in outputs. Diseconomies of scale may occur if a firm becomes too large, as illustrated by the rising part of the long-run ATC curve. As the firm expands over time, the expansion may lead to higher average total costs. With diseconomies of scale, an increase in inputs will cause a less than proportionate increase in outputs. Reasons that diseconomies of scale occur include the difficulty in controlling and coordinating large-scale operations. Large bureaucracies lead to communication problems. Workers may feel alienated and therefore may not work efficiently, and shirking or work avoidance may be easier in a larger firm. Where MES occurs on an industry's long-run ATC determines if there will be many or few producers, and whether they will be large, small, or different sizes. A natural monopoly is a rare situation where economies of scale extend beyond the market size. Therefore, one large firm can provide the product more cheaply than a multi-firm market. This is a long-run ATC curve showing industries with an extended range of constant returns to scale. These industries will be populated by firms of many different sizes. Small and large-scale producers will coexist and be equally successful. MES occurs at an output of Q1. Industries with economies of scale over a wide range of outputs will lead to a few large-scale firms. Small firms cannot realize the minimum efficient scale and will not be able to compete. The long-run ATC is lowest only when there is a large output. Rising gasoline prices will cause the short-run costs such as AVC, MC, and ATC to rise for firms that use this type of energy as an input. As a result, firms like FedEx will see substantial cost increases, whereas firms that do not need to transport products physically will not be affected by the rise in fuel costs. Startup firms have been successful by lowering their ATC as they increased output and achieved economies of scale. This spreads out R&D and advertising costs over a larger number of units. Some examples of these types of firms are Starbucks, Microsoft, and Google. The Weber stamping machine can make as many as tens of thousands of components per year. Though the machine is expensive, $180 million, it can make parts quickly and cheaply. This machine is only warranted in factories with very large-scale production. This would be for those companies that can achieve economies of scale by using the low-cost productive machine. Daily newspapers have experienced decreases in advertising revenues, falling subscriptions, and increases in their AFC. Advertising revenue has shifted to the internet, and daily newspapers may be a thing of the past. If they raise the price of the newspaper, they will sell fewer papers, but then the AFC rises too. A commercial aircraft requires large-scale production, which easily achieves economies of scale and requires few production plants. Concrete requires small-scale production, and therefore there are thousands of plants. Instead of investing heavily in their own computing systems and taking a risk that future output may not justify the cost, companies can now outsource their computational needs to providers like AWS, Azure, and others. These cloud providers can take advantage of massive long-run economies of scale as more companies migrate to cloud computing.